from Ohio.
Mr. President, as we've just seen, there is no more decent or honest senator in the United States Senate than the senator from Wyoming who just spoke, and that's why we were able to expedite the process tonight. It may seem like we're here late, but frankly, we all expected to be here till 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, and instead we worked things out. And you just saw an example of why we did, both in committee and here on the floor. Senator Enzi was able to work with people, be fair, honest, and that pays off. It gave everybody a fair shot. I will also say that he has produced a budget that does balance, which I think most Americans agree with. As he said so well, the budget is a framework. So the budget itself does not have specific policies in it. In fact, those would have to go to other committees to be passed and then passed by the full Senate and the House and signed into law by the President. What it does do is it prepares this body to do something really important and really exciting. And that's the opportunity to reform our broken tax code. It's so important because it'll give us a shot in the arm in terms of our economy, get this economy moving again, and because it's going to help people who have been left behind in this economy. Really, when you look at it over the past 15 years, so many people I represent and are represented by the other members in this chamber have not seen their wages go up. In fact, they've been flat. And what has gone up? Expenses. Healthcare expenses more than any, frankly. It's the biggest single increase people see in their family budgets, but also food and medicine and, frankly, tuitions. So that's the middle class squeeze. Flat wages, not seeing more take-home pay, and yet seeing higher expenses. And what we have the opportunity to do here in this tax reform bill that is made possible by the budget that was passed tonight, and again, the budget's a framework. It doesn't mandate things. The most important thing I think we did tonight was we set the stage for common sense tax reform that's essential to this effort to grow our economy, to create more jobs, and to create better jobs and increase wages for middle-class Americans. We heard a lot of discussion tonight about it adding to the deficit. I will just add to what has been said already. If we do this tax reform right, it will not add to the deficit. In fact, I strongly believe it will actually reduce the deficit over the next 10 years. Why do I say that? Because I'm going to talk for a second about some of the things that are in good pro-growth tax reform that we are planning to implement here that will actually grow the economy. That will result in what? More economic activity and more revenue coming in to the Treasury. So if you assume, as the Congressional Budget Office does, they're only going to grow this economy 1.9%, that's a pretty paltry amount, 1.9% over the next 10 years, way below what the average has been for the past 30 years, then let's say all this tax reform we're doing only grows the economy by a little bit more. Let's say 0.4%. So instead of 1.9%, let's say we grow the economy at 2.3%. That's a very conservative estimate, I believe, based on the kinds of things we're talking about. That will mean that we actually not only have a revenue-neutral tax reform proposal, but we begin paying back some of the national debt by having the deficit once again, as it was back in the years 2000, 2001, be unified on a unified basis, a zero deficit. So this is an exciting opportunity to help people be able to seek their goals in life, but also to actually help with regard to the budget deficit. So I agree with the chairman on that. I think we have an opportunity here, if we do the right tax relief, to really help to get the budget deficit down. So how does this comprehensive tax reform help the middle class? We talked about this a little bit today. Some of us offered amendments. I offered one with regard to the business tax side of things. But I think it does it in 3 ways. First, it immediately helps the family budget by cutting middle class taxes. So everything that's been laid out in terms of the proposals tonight on the tax side talk about the fact that for families who are working families in this country, who are making 30, 40, 50, 60,000 bucks a year, those folks are going to see a reduction in their taxes, which is going to help the family budget. The tax code, of course, is very complicated, too burdensome. One thing we are proposing is to double what's called the standard deduction. What does that mean? That means for people who take the standard deduction now, and about 2/3 of the people I represent do, they'll be able to have a doubling of that from $12,000 for a family, let's say up to $24,000 for a family. That's a zero tax bracket for the first $24,000 in income. That's significant middle-class tax relief. Second, we're going to expand the child tax credit. That's really important, not just to provide relief, but to help families with kids to be able to afford child care. And then finally, we're going to adjust the bracket so that people who are beyond the standard deduction, doubling of it, and who don't take advantage of the child tax credit also get tax relief. So these are ways in which folks are going to see an immediate help to the family budget. But it's more than that. It's more than that. And I think, frankly, the most significant part of this reform is going to be giving the economy that shot in the arm and helping to increase jobs and improve wages. That's going to happen, I think, through the business tax relief that we've talked about. First, with regard to smaller companies, the so-called pass-through companies. About 3/4 of the companies in America pay their taxes as individuals. This is the corner drugstore. This is the small manufacturing business in your town. Those folks are going to see a reduction in their taxes on their business income so they can invest more in that business and create more jobs. And a lot of the growth is going to come from these smaller businesses. That's the 25% rate people are talking about as compared to, say, a 35 or higher rate for individuals. That's something that is fair in part because we're also going to lower the rates for people who are in the larger businesses. These are the C corporations that are being talked about. That rate has to come down because if it does not, America will continue to lose jobs and investment overseas. And that's what's happening right now. Just in the last 24 hours, another major American company announced that they were inverting. In other words, they were going overseas. Why? Because of the tax code. It is amazing that the tax code that this Congress is responsible for improving is so bad that people are actually voting with their feet and leaving the country and taking jobs and investment with them. We've done research on this. We've had investigations on this. We know what's happening. We know, as an example, that because of our tax code, there are almost 4,700 companies just in the last 13 years that have become foreign companies that otherwise would be American companies. Think about that. That's the Ernst & Young study we recently saw. This is amazing. We know for a fact that it's not just about these companies leaving America and going to other countries and doing these so-called inversions, becoming a foreign company, but it's also foreign companies coming here and taking over U.S. companies. And again, what's happening here is you see jobs and investment going overseas. Why is this? Well, it's for a couple reasons. One is that American companies now have the highest tax rate in all of the industrialized world. So the 35% tax rate you hear about, that's a high rate compared to every other country in the world that we do business with. That's a negative, but it's also how we tax. We tax in a way that discourages us from bringing profits back to America, to the point that, unbelievably, there is between $2.5 trillion and $3 trillion, some say more, of earnings that is stuck overseas, locked out of America, that could come back here to expand plant and equipment and jobs, to actually get this economy moving. This is a huge opportunity for us. We don't want to see these companies go offshore. We want to see them come back. Trade policy is important. Regulations are important. Worker retraining programs are important. Healthcare cost containment is important. But nothing is more important than fixing this broken tax code if we're going to see the kind of economic growth and improvement in wages that we all hope for. There's been a lot of studies done on this, and it says that since we haven't changed our code since the mid-1980s, every other one of our competitors have. They've all lowered their rates. They've all gone to a system of taxation that's more efficient to get this money back to their countries. In 1986, Ronald Reagan was president. He made some great changes. That was 31 years ago. Things have changed a lot since then. By the way, back then, Pete Rose was still playing for my Cincinnati Reds. That's how long ago it was. It's time for us to update this tax code, to modernize it, and to bring back those jobs and that investment. And we can do it. We can do it because of what happened tonight. This creates the framework for us to be able to do this. In a recent Business Roundtable survey of 150 American companies, these are the CEOs, 82% said the tax reform that we're talking about will prompt them to increase capital spending. 3/4 of them, 76%, says it's going to increase hiring. And with this reduced tax burden, businesses are going to have the money to invest in their workers. I will tell you, with the tighter job market that's out there now, as the economy has begun to improve, this will increase competition for workers, and this will increase wages. We know that's going to happen. Every economist agrees that this kind of tax reform is going to change behavior. Now, some might think it doesn't improve the economy as much as others do, but everyone believes that this will incentivize us to create more jobs and improve wages here in the United States of America. There's a group called the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan group up here we work with. They have a study that says that as much as 70% of the benefit from that lower corporate rate is going to go where? To the workers, in terms of higher wages, better benefits. That's the way we're going to help the middle class also, not just with regard to the tax relief directly, but with regard to helping to improve job creation and increase wages. So I'm excited about this. I think it can happen. I think it's something that is long overdue. I think it's something, frankly, that should be bipartisan. This was what the Simpson-Bowles proposal, which was a totally bipartisan proposal, said we ought to do. In fact, they took the top rate down to 28%, lower than anybody's talking about here. But they said we should go to this kind of taxation we're talking about in terms of international businesses, in terms of corporations, in terms of creating jobs. 2 years ago, I worked with Chuck Schumer, who is now the Democratic leader here in the United States Senate, and we were asked to co-chair a working group on taxation, particularly focusing on the international side, and we came up with a consensus that said we've got to fix this broken tax code. It's not working, and we need to bring this money back, and we need to bring these jobs back through going to this kind of system we're talking about, a so-called territorial system. So in the past, this has been bipartisan, and my hope is it can be again. Yes, the budget provides the framework for us to get this done, not on a 60-vote basis, but a 50-vote basis. But we should do it with more than 60 votes. We welcome input from our Democratic colleagues. I believe in the end this will be bipartisan because I do believe that the vast majority of Americans out there, as they understand this tax reform proposal, will say, yeah, I think middle-class tax relief makes sense. And yeah, I think we should be bringing back the jobs and the investment to this country. And I think that's going to be something that members will hear across this country and across this aisle. And when they do, I believe we'll have the opportunity to have the kind of common sense, bipartisan tax reform we need in this country. We need to do it to be able to have a thriving American middle class. And we need to do it to have a stronger America. I'm excited about this opportunity. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Mr. President, I yield back my time on that, but I have another matter that I need to do the closing business.